Let's get straight into media meltdowns. Well, this week, French President Emmanuel Macron was assaulted by his 72-year-old wife, First Lady Brigitte Macron, for the world to see. And although the slap was caught on camera, the French president insists that they were just joking, which we all know is a lie. But let's look at how CNN covered the incident. CNN video of Brigitte Macron pushing President Macron fuels Russian disinformation. Russian disinformation, have we heard that from the leftist media before? You know, that was the narrative around Hunter Biden's laptop. We were told that Russia meddled in the 2016 election, and now there's footage of the French president being slapped by his wife. What do? They link the story to Russian disinformation. It's almost like there's a pattern here when it comes to one side of politics. Now, Macron's office put out a statement saying they were just horsing around and that was all that was needed to give ammunition to the conspiracy theorists. Now, I do have to say that there are some wild conspiracies about the First Lady around out there that are completely absurd, but it is not a conspiracy that Brigitte Macron slapped her husband. And it really has a lot of people reflecting on their romantic love story, where Brigitte was Emmanuel's teacher. She was nearly 40 years old and he was just 15 when they met, which is really gross when you think about it. But the hosts of The View have discussed the incident on the plane. And who would have seen this coming but Whoopi Goldberg has come out leaping to the couple's defence and Brigitte's defence, insisting that she was simply reaching for her husband's face.
I'm sorry, what I saw, and maybe I'm crazy, but I saw someone doing this. Come here, let me move you.
I did not see that. I saw embarrassment.
That's what I saw.
Okay,
I saw her reaching for his face.
A flight attendant.
And I'm sure that's exactly what Whoopi would say if this was Donald Trump and Melania. And when other hosts suggested that it was clearly icy between the couple as Brigitte refused to hold her husband's hand when he offered it to her while the cameras were rolling, well, Whoopi has a brilliantly insightful explanation for that too.
Joking narrative is sweet. I mean, we won't ever know what's going on here, but I
can tell you why she won't take his hand.
Why?
Because she doesn't want to look like she can't come down the stairs.
Or that, but there's versions.
Of course. Thank goodness for Whoopi and her spot-on analysis, where a clearly violent Brigitte Macron is defended for her behaviour. Joining us now is Brent Buchanan, GOP pollster and messaging strategist. Brent, great to see you. I want to get into the latest polling with you in a moment, but first of all, can I get your reaction to how the hosts of The View have covered the Macron slap? I mean, if it was Donald Trump and Melania, I'm sure we'd get a pretty different perspective.
I think I was the third person today to watch The View after you sent me the link to their Twitter post. But I can tell you, normal Americans do not respond to watching The View. And honestly, I was a bit shocked in the fact that they really didn't go after defending Macron's wife very hard.
Okay, look, it comes after reports that Disney CEO Bob Iger asked the co-hosts of The View to turn down their heated political rhetoric, aka their anti-Trump rhetoric. And in case you're not familiar with just how far these hosts go, here's a reminder.
Take him seriously and take him literally.
I don't think that we have to. I think it would be remiss of us to not say Joe Biden knows how to do this.
Yes,
he knows how to do this. He's quite good at this, and you know you can't refute anything with him because he just. When I say him, I mean
he rambles.
Trump.
Yeah.
He tends to just.
But can I mention one thing?
Spitting while speaking about the president, that is what you get when you watch Whoopi Goldberg. So Disney sources told the Daily Beast that both Disney and the ABC News president recently suggested that the talk show hosts be less antagonistic on political issues. Brent, is this actually going to help The View? Or really, when you look at their coverage time and time again, should they just be cancelled at this point?
Well, if you're speaking to highly educated white women with no children or no children at home who have nothing to do except watch The View, and that really is the new base of the Democratic Party, then maybe The View actually has a place. But when you look at the broad spectrum of what Americans want, is they want to be more in the center or actually not political at all. And so this call to The View is really a reaction to the 2024 election, which basically stopped the swing of the political pendulum. And so what happened with Obama's election in 2008 is that after he got elected, he said, let me take this pendulum and swing it as far to the left as possible. And what's going to happen to the pendulum? It's going to swing to the right equally. And that's how we got Donald Trump. And so when Joe Biden came in, he said, well, Obama didn't go far enough. Let me pull that pendulum even further. And then it swung further to the right with Donald Trump 2.0. And now you have these TV shows like The View and Disney and others who are looking at their base, their subscriber base, their viewership, and seeing it plummeting and realizing that they have pulled the pendulum way too far to the left.
Let's get into the polling and the data now. Trump has been back in power for nearly 130 days, and in that time, there's been a massive shift in how Americans feel about the country and the direction that it's heading in. So at the time of the election in November last year, when Joe Biden was in power, more than 75% of Americans believed the country was going in the wrong direction, which is, of course, part of the reason Donald Trump delivered such a landslide victory. Now we have Trump back. He's been back in power for some time. He's been getting the work done. And the latest polling by Rasmussen has found that 50% of Americans believe the country is on the right track. And that same polling group has found that Trump's approval rating is at 53%. Look, it's fascinating because whether you like him or not, it appears as though he's certainly giving people confidence about what's ahead, about the future. And his approval rating, well, it suggests that people do think that he's doing a great job. What do you put this down to?
Well, those numbers are a bit rosy, but there's definitely a trend to where Donald Trump's image has improved. I mean, we've seen it in our weekly polling also. And a lot of it comes from the fact that Americans definitely wanted change, but Trump brought so much change within his first 100 days that they really didn't understand how to grasp what all was going on. Every single day he was coming out with something brand new, changing what they'd known for years. And now it feels like the pace has slowed down a little bit of how many changes are happening. So I really say the first 100 days were probably the hardest, but the most important for Donald Trump. And in the last 30 days, there's been a bit more stability in how much change is coming. And that is really what is driving this reaction to Donald Trump's image improving in the last month or so.
Okay. Well, meanwhile, Democrats are not polling well at all. Recent polling from NBC and Fox News had the Democrats reaching an all-time low. I want to get your thoughts on why that could be in a moment, but I want to talk to you about this bizarre new strategy that they're putting in place. We know that the Democrats know how to waste money. We saw that in the election campaign last year, where Kamala Harris blew more than $1 billion in a few months for what was essentially a disastrous election campaign. But just when you thought that, you know, they couldn't waste any more money or what they spend money on couldn't be more ridiculous, the Democrats are spending $20 million on a study examining how to speak to American men. The New York Times reports that their $20 million project, Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, will look at the language and content that gains the attention of male voters. So this, of course, comes after their brutal election loss, where 53% of men aged between 18 and 44 supported Donald Trump. So, Brent, what's your assessment of this $20 million on learning how to speak to men? Is that really going to help them?
Well, first off, I would like to offer for only $10 million a study in how to understand people who watch The View. And that probably will turn out about as well as this $20 million studying how to speak to men. But no joke, there was actually a study done a couple of years ago about testosterone levels in men and how that affected their political views. And so this must be low testosterone men trying to figure out how to speak to men with normal and high testosterone. But really what it comes down to is that Democrats are now the party of the coastal elites, and these folks have no clue how to talk to normal folks. And so they're trying to throw money at the problem as opposed to looking internally and saying, what have we done and said, and what positions have we taken that have made normal people, male and female, both turn away from the left, not even the center left anymore, but the left parties of the U.S. and around the world, because they just do not understand normal folks anymore. They've never run into a normal person in their everyday life.
And the Democrats, they're right now searching for a new leader. They've been trying to rebrand for some time, and they really haven't been able to gain momentum. Do you see them turning this around at some point? It looks pretty grim.
Well, it's really hard to be the party out of power when your opposing party has such a strong leader like the Republicans have in Donald Trump. I mean, I remember back to the Obama days once he took power in 2009, that it wasn't really until the Tea Party movement came around after Obamacare was pushed out and some of the planned changes to the tax laws. But even then, we didn't have a leader. We just had a movement that was asking for a leader. And so far, the left hasn't even found its movement. And without that, they can't find their leader. We recently did a study where we looked at and asked voters who the head of the Democratic Party is and listed out about 10 to 12 options. And not even the Democrats could come up with an answer over 20% of who the own leader of their party was.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, certainly the number one question that Americans were thinking while Joe Biden was in office was who is actually running the country? And now a bombshell video has emerged of the Democratic National Committee's Vice Chair David Hogg admitting who actually ran the 2024 race behind the scenes.
Foundational question for me is like, how corrupt is the DNC if so many people knew, or few people knew about Biden, well, the president of the United States?
I mean, I think the fact of the matter is the DNC is always going to be like a campaign arm of the president, ultimately. The bigger issue was like the inner circle that was around Biden. That's it.
And I can't stress to you enough.
Like Joe Biden's chief of staff, like had an enormous amount of power.
Joe Biden?
Joe Biden's chief of staff.
That was like an open secret at the left. Like, I would avoid him. Like, he was scary.
So that was secretly recorded and then published by Project Veritas. And there we have it. He's admitting that Jill Biden's chief of staff, Anthony Bernal, had enormous power. And this comes after Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin, revealed that former President Joe Biden's aides considered Jill Biden one of the most powerful first ladies in history, which made her top aide, Anthony Bernal, one of the most influential people in the White House. What's your assessment of this? How damning is this for Jill Biden?
The only people who finally realized that Joe Biden was not actually in charge of this country for the last 4 years is the media. And I don't know if they were complicit in hiding it, but at minimum, they were incompetent in not seeing it, because Americans realized this. That is why Joe Biden's image was so bad. That is why the direction of the country was so poor, is because Americans actually knew what was going on because they saw it with their own eyes, and then they realized the consequences of it. And for those of you who ever want to come to the United States, if you ever go to a barbecue joint that has a ceiling and a backdrop like that, you have found the right barbecue place. Wherever they had dinner with the Project Veritas and David Hogg, that's where you want to go find American barbecue.
Finally, the Trump administration is cutting federal contracts with Harvard University, intensifying the president's clash with the nation's oldest and wealthiest university. Now, Donald Trump is talking about giving the money that was going to Harvard to trade schools.
They're taking $5 billion, and I'd rather see that money go to trade schools. And by the way, they're totally anti-Semitic at Harvard, as you know, and some other colleges, too, in all fairness to them. And it's been exposed, very exposed. And I think they're dealing very badly. Every time they fight, they lose another $250 million. Yesterday, we found another $100 million. And they have, they have a fund, an endowment, $52 billion. All right? They get a lot of that from the United States. And I think it's ridiculous.
It's an interesting argument. Should this money go, towards trade schools instead of funding woke Harvard? Is this going to win Donald Trump political points?
If you look at what's happened in American politics in the last 20 years, it's really been driven by what we call the diploma divide. So if you're not college educated, 20 years ago, you were more likely to be a Democrat, and now today you're more likely to be a Republican. When we just finished an exit study of the US election, we found that folks who came out for the first time to vote for Donald Trump, which means they'd skipped 2020 or they weren't registered in 2020 and did not participate, 80% of them did not have a college degree. And then when you look at the folks who flipped from Biden in 2020 to Trump in 2024, you are much more likely to be non-college educated. The base of the Republican Party is not college educated. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is cost, because going to a university now is so expensive. Two, they walk out of there with degrees that now AI can do in the next 5 minutes instead of them that they spent 5 years getting a degree for. And it's really all driven by the fact that going to college used to be the common sense thing, and now it takes your common sense out of you. And Donald Trump is attacking Harvard, one, because there's no reason for us to be giving universities that much money, but two, because that is no longer the base of the Republican Party, and Donald Trump has always been a leader in figuring out where's the Republican Party headed, and he drives them there, and much of this is from the diploma divide.
Yeah, it's interesting. Brent Buchanan, GOP pollster and messaging strategist, thank you so much for your time and joining us on Power Hour.